My name is Sarah Birch. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment for the Brown School. Again, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for day 2 of Admitted Student Week. Today's session I'm really excited about and have the pleasure of introducing our Assistant Dean of Community Partnerships, Cynthia Williams, and her colleagues who will be talking about living and learning in St. Louis. So I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia. Please, throughout the session, feel free to ask questions, post them in the chat. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask them aloud, that's great too, but questions in the chat are awesome, and we'll elevate those to Cynthia and her colleagues. All right, Cynthia.
All right, Sarah, thank you, and welcome to everyone. I am going to ask you, if at all possible, feel free to come online so we can see your beautiful faces. We like to get a feel. It's a great way to connect with you when we can see you. My name is Cynthia Williams. I am the Assistant Dean, as Sarah has told you already, of Community Partnerships here at the Brown School. And I am an employee, an alum of the Brown School, and a lifelong resident of St. Louis. And if I'm blessed to see October of this year, it will be my 41st year at the Brown School. So when I tell you I'm a long-time employee, I mean I'm a long-time employee at the Brown School. Prior to my becoming the assistant dean for community partnerships, I was the assistant dean for field education as well. And so that was a great transition. I know many of the community members, organizations, CEOs, you name it. I know quite a few, having been in 2 positions that I've served in. I'm especially happy to be co-moderating this session today with my colleague Stefani Weeden-Smith and Carolyn Cosgrove today. And so I'm going to ask Stefani if she would introduce herself, and then Carolyn.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm Stefani Weeden-Smith. I'm Assistant Director for Community Engagement at Gephardt Institute for Civic and Community Engagement. I'm so excited to be with you today.
And my name is Carolyn Cosgrove-Payne, and I am the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Environmental Studies program in the College of Arts and Sciences on campus. Also very excited to be with all of you today.
And so the 3 of us, we don't assume that we're going to tell you anything that you couldn't have Googled or that you don't already know something about. But nobody can tell it from our perspectives. Our perspective is having worked at the university for a number of years, being community members. Our job is to tell you today about the wealth of opportunities that really are available to you. Some have been born out of the divide that sometimes is present in the community, the disparities and the inequities, as well as the strengths of a community. And so we're hoping that you will have a lot of questions that you will put in the chat. But in the meantime, just to get us started, I want to tell you a little bit about St. Louis. Of course, you know, St. Louis is the 2nd largest city in Missouri. And also, I believe that we are the 3rd largest employer here. And so the thing about Missouri, the thing about St. Louis is that we are a community, and we are a community that we love. I love St. Louis. Have I ever lived anywhere else? I have. I've lived in California, and I quickly moved back to St. Louis because I needed a lot more country. California was too much rock and roll for me, so I moved back to St. Louis because I really like that homey feel. St. Louis, if you were to ask someone, is it a segregated town? Well, if you look at Google, it will tell you it sure is, but it's also home. It's a town in which we have learned to get together, to build community, to build camaraderie around the issues that confront all of our neighbors here in St. Louis. And so just like where you come from, it's not a perfect environment, but again, it's home. And it is a place where families grow up and we learn. And we have had some challenges, of course, as everyone else has experienced the pandemic. We have things in place, organizations in place that are taking care of the issues that have arisen because of the disparities and
Yeah.
inaccessibility to some of the vaccines that were needed. But you know what? This community has rallied, and as we've always done, we've met the challenge and exceeded expectations of communities across the country. So I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn and ask, could you tell our audience how we work together, Carolyn?
Absolutely. I would love to. So in my introduction, I mentioned that that I am housed in the environmental studies program. So I'm not even in the Brown School. I'm getting a message about my internet connection. So if somebody could let me know if I'm breaking up, I will turn off my video. Do I sound okay, Cynthia? Okay. Great. So I'm housed in a totally different school and a totally different program on campus. But the reality of all of this community engaged work and this partnership work that we do at WashU is that all of these different leaders in community engagement work and partnership work on campus, we work really closely together. And Cynthia and Stefani and other folks on campus have been incredibly supportive and collaborative as we work in each of our own units to move forward really wonderful programming that's community connected. So, so for me, from where I'm sitting, even though I'm not even at the Brown School, Cynthia has guest lectured in my classes, my capstone class on sustainability. For undergrads, Cynthia has lectured on what it means to live and work in St. Louis, what it means to do environmental work here. Stefani has provided really important programming on exiting and entering communities in St. Louis to my students and has helped our faculty lead this community engagement visioning process for how we want to work in St. Louis and how we want to be for St. Louis as well. So together, all three of us, along with some other folks on campus who work in this space, we're really able to offer this rich and varied array of opportunities for students to learn in and with community in St. Louis. So we can also, Stefani, I know that, do you want to share more about your role at the Gephardt Institute for the whole university and how you work on community partnerships in that way?
So sure, yes, thanks so much, Carolyn. Again, I'm Stefani Weeden-Smith out of the Gephardt Institute. We, in the role that I have, we're really thinking comprehensively on how we can really support students, staff, and faculty on how you're kind of entering wherever you're coming from into the St. Louis community. What are the best ways that we are really working with our community members? We are a fellow neighbor to our community members. What are the best ways that we are really not going in kind of telling folks what they need to be doing or what we kind of feel needs to happen, but more really listening is the main thing that I'm really always really supporting folks. How do we really listen and get to the place that we can really work with those outside of our bubble, and how we're really working towards areas that are in so real need of creating some type of collective impact. So that happens in many different ways. Sometimes it's Carolyn and Cynthia and I talking about areas of where folks are working and how we can support them, especially when there's a lot of folks from the campus and in particular areas throughout the region. It also, in some of my work, it comes through, I'm able to support some, the beginnings of different projects that folks are working on in community through our Civic Engagement Fund. So I'm able to really talk through folks on what are new partners that they really need to meet that are doing some of this work already. What are ways that of existing partnerships that you might have developed, how we can really expand that to get more funding for support of our community residents in ways that, I know that, part of coming into this work of social work is really, really the key to it is really how do you really support and how you can really help connect folks. And so I'm just there to support some of that work.
Thank you, Stephanie. Now I'm going to tell you part of my most favorite part of my work when I'm working with students in organizations. Number one, many organizations in our community, this is no hype, I promise you, are run by Brown School graduates. So we already have a relationship that was established when individuals were students, developing professionals. They were students here at the Brown School, or they were undergraduates, and we got to know them well. As they progressed in their professional development, of course, they were hired and promoted in various positions. They either became field instructors or other leaders in various industries, or the CEO of an organization. So if that weren't true, I honestly wouldn't tell you. I deflect to another conversation. But many of our students are leaders in this community. They've come from different states, some of them in different countries, but they stayed here in St. Louis. That is an exciting part for me. Number two, what I like is to be able to interact with students. And although all of you are brilliant, one thing you will hear from me is be brilliant, but be humble, because you can be taught something. Those individuals who are practicing and leading and learning can actually teach our students something. On occasion, we will have a student go in raring to go and raring to tell organizations what they should have and could have done. And when we get the opportunity, we will gently pull them back and say, no, my way is no, baby. That's not the way we do it. So humility is a very important part of what we do and what we stress in this Midwestern kind of Southern kind of town. That hospitality and courtesy and humility is very, very important as you're doing this work, whether it's in public health, social policy, or in social work. That is always the best approach. The other thing that I want to tell you about is what's so great about St. Louis is the multitude of activities that are free here in St. Louis. That oftentimes, when you need to de stress, and you will need to de stress as a graduate student, some of you will be coming to a new city, a new state. Some of you will be just from around the corner. But everything will be new related to your education. But there are opportunities for you to de stress and come back fresh and approach the work that is in front of you. I'm going to ask a question of Stephanie and Carolyn and ask if you would address this. What do you think is some of the learning that students can gain, given that our region, like all regions, have challenges? What has been your experience and the thing that stands out the most for either one of you? Can I start with you, Stephanie?
Well, I would say that what stands out the most to me is, as I mentioned, this whole idea of listening, again, with Cynthia's idea of humility. I'm sure many of you have heard many different stories about St. Louis. And so I really ask, in terms of the work that you hope to do in the city, to put some of those stories aside and to be able to find out for yourself on what the work that folks are doing, and to really look for, I mean, maybe this sounds very kind of naive, but to look for the good, look for the assets. There's some amazing folks that are leading organizations, are doing the work, have been doing it day in, day out for a long time, and really making some real headway that don't always get the prestige, but it is only through listening, having conversations, getting to know folks with the work that's happening here, and to find ways that maybe you can plug in and be able to support. So I really think, this idea of humility, of integrity, of really being able to kind of see what's going on are the best places for folks to really be able to start in terms of being a good neighbor, being a good steward of the St. Louis community, and hopefully, I'm also a native St. Louis, and I'm always wishing and knowing that St. Louis has a lot to offer, and it's just a matter of us being able to take advantage and to be able to not take it for granted, and to be able to do the work that will get us to the next level. So Carolyn, what would you add?
So I'm not a native St. Louisan. I grew up in Minnesota, and I lived on both coasts before moving here in 2012. And something that I learned here that I have not learned anywhere else, and that is something that I have the privilege of watching students learn as well, is the really important organizing and advocacy work that has come out of all of the different types of challenges our region has faced around like criminal justice issues, policing issues, racism, segregation. The organizing power that has come out of that has been incredible. And I think that the amount and the variety of resources and ways to plug in to those efforts and to pursue activism and advocacy and organizing here are just unmatched.
Thank you both. So now I'm going to get into some nitty gritty, I think. Get some to meat and potatoes. And what I want to say to you is I went to, my niece had an admitted student weekend. I won't tell you what school she was at, but when I walked away from her admitted student orientation, I was shocked. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the word poverty, oppression, racism, white supremacy, not one word of that came up in the discussion at all. And I'm thinking, what kind of program are you going to where these issues aren't raised? Because this is what communities grapple with. So I want to tell all of you that I've had students who have said to me, Cynthia, one reason I came to the Brown School is because you have been so open and that you seem to tell it like it is. Well, I'm not going to change that. This community is not perfect, but it's just right for each one of you. You can bring so much to this community. You can bring such strength to this community to build on the strengths that we already have. Now, for instance, we have struggled with many things that I've already named, but we have struggled with communities coming together without having a competing narrative. Well, we've been successful in that because you know what? It sounds like the pandemic, it was really and is really bad, but it hasn't been all bad because it has allowed us to pull together for the common good. I want to stress to each one of you that that is something that you can contribute to. But in the 40 years that I have been at the Brown School, I've not been anywhere else. My whole career has been at the Brown School. My voice, like your voice, can be lifted up as an advocate, as a truth teller, as a bridge builder. That's what I'm looking for each one of you to do. You will have the opportunity. There will be conversations that you don't want to hear. You won't want to keep hearing about race relations. You will get tired of hearing about poverty. But I have to be frank with you. That's life. And we have to be in a position to help communities heal and grow and develop. Now, I will tell you, you might have already figured it out. I'm also in the ministry, so I might sound a little preachy, so I have to pull it back, but that's from my heart. This community is so strong and exciting. It is such an exciting community. I've told you about some of the free things that we have, beautiful parks, and actually in your orientation, I will be one of those individuals that will give you the context of St. Louis. So I'm kind of give you an overview now. But our neighborhoods who have strong associations, they have strong, strong voices. And I'm so proud of them because you just can't come in and bowl them over. Communities have opinions. Community members have stayed in their neighborhoods and invested. I'm going to ask you, Carolyn or Stephanie, either one of you. We have a street here, and it's called the Delmar Divide. Can you tell our students about that famous little street that was made famous by the BBC? Maybe. Okay,
Yes.
Stephanie.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
You want to start, Carolyn?
I can start and then you can jump in also.
Sounds good.
Sure. So the Delmar Divide in St. Louis, gosh, we have to go back. Back in time to start talking about the Delmar Divide. So St. Louis is a racially segregated city, like many cities in the United States. And a great, to really dive into this, a great, oh my gosh, Colin Gordon's book, help me, what is the title of his book? Mapping Decline. If you really want to get into a history of St. Louis and of segregation in St. Louis, Mapping Decline is a great place to start. So it's The Broken Heart of America, which just came out. But the Delmar Divide is a street that runs across the city, about right in the middle, right north of Forest Park. It runs east-west, and it is sort of an unofficial boundary between what we call South St. Louis and North St. Louis. There is a graphic that is frequently shared that was part of a report that came out of the Brown School on segregation in St. Louis, and there's a very big difference in who lives north of the Delmar Divide versus south of the Delmar Divide. There's a huge racial difference, right? We have majority Black neighborhoods largely north of Delmar, more diverse and majority white neighborhoods south of Delmar. We have huge differences in home value, in the amount of money that folks earn in a year, in other indicators, and especially in health indicators for communities. And that divide is not some sort of natural phenomenon, but is the result of many decades of intentional government policy, both locally and federally, that have reinforced segregated housing conditions throughout St. Louis and across the nation. So those things, even though housing segregation is no longer legal, thanks to Shelley v. Kramer decision, which came out of St. Louis case. Sorry, it looks like I'm frozen, but I'm not sure.
You're not, you're good.
Great, wonderful. Even though it's no longer legal to segregate housing based on race, we still have de facto segregation in St. Louis along that line. You can still see the legacy of racism in our city there. And what would we like to add to that, Stefani?
Well, and what I would say, a couple things I've added for you to peruse if you're not familiar with mapping decline, and then of course the newest book from the Broken Heart of America, for you to take a look at some of some deeper look at that Del Mar divide. But I would say, as you all are considering coming into this community, that the story of the Del Mar divide isn't much different from many stories throughout the United States. I'm sure wherever you're coming from, you might have similar stories where, because of redlining and because of racism and systemic inequality, we've set ourselves up for these divides. So I don't think that is going to be such a new story for folks. But what I would add to that is, there's the question about how do we get to know, this community. If you're moving, if you're new to this community, what I would say is, what are the ways that we're able to really break down some of those kind of stereotypes, those stories that we've been told. I would invite you, as Cynthia has talked about, is, there's lots of free events. There's lots of festivals as folks are moving into St. Louis that I would really encourage you to take part of, especially those events that are going to be outside of maybe where you're living, to really peruse all of St. Louis and really get to know many of your new neighbors. And I would say, not only, those neighborhood associations, as you come in and you're getting to know the city, is a good place to start attending those meetings, and those community gatherings that folks have is a way to get to know St. Louis and to be able to break down some of those divides. I would also say, really taking the time to just talk to your neighbors. I know some folks are like, I'm only here for a short period of time, and there's my studies, but it's really, who are your neighbors? Who are those folks? And even your neighbors, again, outside of maybe where you're living, those folks on the other side of Del Mar. How do we get to know and have conversations and hear a lot of the historical perspective, hear different perspectives on the good work that is also being done? Yes, there is a lot of definitely of where we need to go, but there's also some really amazing things that folks have been doing throughout the years that I think that you really need to go to the source on and really get to hear from them on what that looks like, as opposed to sometimes just taking on face value some of the stories that we've read about St. Louis. And so those would be the ways that I would encourage folks to really get to know as they're getting to know St. Louis.
And so somebody might ask, Cynthia, why in the world would you bring up the Del Mar divide? Because there's good news. On the east end of the Del Mar divide, there is an amazing something that has happened. There's something called the Del Mar Divine that is in the works. All of the restoration is taking place in buildings at that end of the same Del Mar divide, intentionally to break down that divide. That's just one example of how funders are coming together in this region to bring under one roof many providers who can work with multiple issues in one place. Transportation will be available to get to that Del Mar divine. So when you come into this community, I really encourage you, read the books, look up the Del Mar divine. While I would love for you to go to St. Louis Arch, to the Arch, I would love that, because St. Louis is known for the gateway to the West, right? but you're here to learn. And sometimes learning isn't always easy, and it isn't always um, easy to swallow and sometimes to look at. But you will grow tremendously when you expose yourself to these areas. Again, I am recommending that you read the resources that are being put in the chat, but also look up the Delmar Divine. I'm on that board. And very soon, probably by the fall, that organization will be looking for practicum students. Now, I'm not here to talk about practicum. What I can talk to you about are opportunities. And that is another opportunity, a building that will be opening, I believe, in the spring of 2022, that will have multiple organizations, that is approximately 10 minutes from the campus. You could literally walk to this new organization, this new endeavor that's being built up for over $60 million investment in this Delmar Divine. So that's really the good news. So now I haven't seen any but one question. So Thomas, I'm going to address your question, and I'm going to do it humbly. So the question is, how do international students stay connected with St. Louis when they go back home? I'm excited about making all of these connections and being involved in the community, but I'm planning to return home after studies. Thomas, may I suggest that the connections start now? Be so present that when you go back home, you will have already figured out how to stay connected, because you will have built relationships. You will become a known entity in the community. So it won't be a one-way connection. Not only will you want to be connected, but the people that you meet and work with will want to be connected to you. So my humble recommendation is be present, be invested, be available, and let your yes be full. Does it make sense, Thomas? I'm looking at your smiling face. Let your yes be full. Some things might be new to you, but don't say no because it's new. Take it on, in particular if you're in practicum or if you're volunteering, because there's things other to do than credit work. You can actually volunteer at different organizations. So if there are other questions, if they're not, I'm going to tell you about what I've already told you, what I kind of think is unique about the Brown School. But another thing that's really unique about the Brown School, well, let me finish that sentence. What's unique about the Brown School is that many of our graduates go on to lead organizations, and they have invested not only in their education, but their families are an investment in this community. So that's very unique for the Brown School. Let me explain. Students come here not intending to stay, but Jamie can tell you a very high percentage of our graduates actually stay in St. Louis. Number one, because of the cost of living. This is a livable community. Um, you know what that means, but it's a community where you can get a lot for not as much as you might spend in other parts of the country. So that is another very unique thing about St. Louis. You're welcome, Thomas. Thank you. So do you guys have any questions? Or Sarah or Jamie, do you have any questions that we might pose or respond to?
Yeah, there is a question from Julia R. She is asking, as a student who is moving to St. Louis this summer, what is the best way to plug in, get involved, and get to know their community? I know you talked about a lot of things, but I'm curious to hear if there are specific ways this summertime. I know the pandemic has made things a little different, but there are still lots of ways to get involved. So curious to hear.
Okay. You want to take a stab at that, Stephanie or Carolyn? Okay.
again, I would just underline, getting out there with especially some of the free events and some of the festivals, your neighborhood association. Those are the best places, I think, to really get to know. It'll center you in really getting to know the folks that live in your community. I think that's the best way. And I think you'll also like learning and hearing from folks that you are getting to live by will also help you to see like where some of the gaps are, where there's opportunities. I know when I moved back to St. Louis, I not only joined the neighborhood association, but then they had some opportunities for me to support like the 4th of July kind of activities. And then I met more folks that were doing work around youth. And so it really opened me up to what the possibilities are in terms of where I think where some of my interests and my passions align, but also just to, again, to hear from folks that are in my community.
And I can add to that one way when I moved to St. Louis that I started to get involved was as I started to search for different things I was interested in, and I found organizations on a Google search or on social media that were working on those things. I just signed up for their newsletters or sent messages to staff that worked there asking about volunteer opportunities. And it was really able, since we're a small town where most of our organizations are pretty accessible, so it's pretty easy to get drawn into the fold of some of these groups just as a new person in town. And I would urge you, something that I'm involved in as a volunteer. I want to tell a quick story. When you go out into the world as a student here, I would echo what Cynthia said about being fully present and really engaging and using, not just taking a back seat just because you are a student, but really feeling empowered to take action, to get involved. I've attended community meetings and meetings with groups like Close the Workhouse, where students attend the meetings, but when they're asked to share in the meetings or to talk about why they're coming, they just say, oh, like, I'm just a student, I'm just here to learn. And I think that you all have so much more to offer than that to our organizations, to our movements. And so I urge you to yes, listen and yes, learn, but also take what you learn and feel free to apply it. Even if you're not planning to stay here, make the most of the time that you do spend here in St. Louis. I didn't intend to live here for very long, and it's been almost 10 years, and I'm not going anywhere. So.
Okay, so here Cynthia's going to come at an additional angle. And because I'm an elder, I'm considered an elder in my community. So I'm just going to come straight at you. International students, don't just hang out with international students. Students of color, don't just hang out with students of color. White students, don't just hang out with white students. Mix it up. I'm being as honest as I can tell you and as direct. When you guys get in your classes and you have group work, mix it up. Get to learn one another. The stereotypes that you know you've been oriented to, the prejudices that you have, that you're ashamed of, address them. And the only way you're going to do that is to stretch yourself. English might not even be your first language, but it's okay. People will lean into you and they will try real hard to understand, and you do the same. There is no substitute for a human interaction and connectedness. So if you really want to experience St. Louis, we have great food, great cuisine here. We have great other resources. You don't want to go by yourself, do you? So make friends. Make friends in your classes. Make friends. Reach out to one another. Now, Do I think that I really need to tell you this? I sure do. Because sometimes you take things for granted and you think people would do some things naturally. But sometimes you just need an invitation, like my new friend Thomas. Thomas, I expect you to come and see me. I expect you to find me in the building somewhere. Ask for me so we can make that connection. Some things have to be intentional. They have to be. So make up your minds now that you are going to make the best out of this experience. But I'm going to challenge you. It won't be the best experience you can have if you don't get to know me. Now, that's a shameless plug, but it's true. But that's for anybody. Make it a point to get outside your bubble so that you can fully experience this community.
It is 100% true. You must get to know Cynthia. Here's another good question from Akasa. They asked, you hear a lot about social causes in St. Louis focusing on improving race relations and building up local communities, and all the videos about WashU, and also that Missouri is a very socially conservative place. That their issue that they're passionate about, which is the issue around homelessness, won't really have a place of study at the Brown School. What are your thoughts?
Oh, that's so not true. You absolutely will not be left out. Okay, I want to explain to you, depending on what side of town you're on, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of abandoned buildings, which is an indication of poverty and sometimes mismanagement of policy. Governmental policies has already been talked about. You absolutely will not have, you will not lack an opportunity to delve into your passion and make someone else passionate about your passion. That's my challenge to you. You absolutely have a place of study in the Brown School. Absolutely.
And I would add on in terms of that question. I think the three of us, like, we come to it not only because this is our work, but we come to this work with a true passion. I'm sure you can hear it in all of our voices of this work of community connecting folks. And so I think past this time, you can always be reaching out to us on who's doing this work in the community and how you can get connected to some of the organizations that will really fulfill your passion. So definitely reach out past this time. I think we will be able to definitely get you, and there's lots of work being done on those that are unhoused and homelessness and poverty. That's definitely the case. I would also add, and I haven't had a chance, I am going to be fortunate to be returning as an adjunct and teaching the social justice, human diversity course. I really think about that course not only is a way for as intro into a lot of folks passionate around all of the isms, but also I really think about it as community minded, and it's a place that I've been able to connect folks and bring people into the classroom that are doing this work so that you can really talk to them firsthand. And I know that many of the other lecturers that are doing this work, they also feel the same way of really the course being a way for us to be able to connect you to the work, not only getting to learn it, but also to see what's happening on the ground. And so I would also say that's a way, get to know your lecturers and professors, right? Where they have some keys to some of the places that you want to be able to do the work.
Absolutely. I also want to elevate at this point that one reason I'm so proud of the Brown School, not only because I'm a graduate, is because post Michael Brown's death. Now, if you don't know who Michael Brown is, that's your homework. Post Michael Brown's death, the Brown School intentionally targeted geographic priority areas here in St. Louis. Put another way, those areas that have often been overlooked, lack investment, access, and attention, the Brown School has committed to working with and identifying partners that already exist in the community that are already delivering services and creating access for communities that have been historically denied access. The Brown School, that's part of my work, I manage those partnerships. Though they're called administrative partnerships. There's an organization, for example, called Better Family Life. That's about a good 7-minute drive from the campus. Family Forward is another organization that's clinically focused. Integrated Health Network. There's an initiative at the Brown School called Homegrown STL that's focused on Black males ages 12 to 29. There are so many initiatives and organizations that actually, now this is no hype either, Brown School students slots for opportunities to volunteer and practicum. They reserve slots for Brown School because of the quality of student that comes from the Brown School. Again, if it was hype, I could talk about something else, but it's not hype. I'm telling you what I know. Students, you have a place in the community waiting on you. You will need to apply, you will need to go through the process, but believe me, the Brown School is making the investment in community, and that is a great thing. Now, don't all universities do that? Well, I can't speak for all universities. I can speak for the Brown School, though, and what I can tell you is our investment is not an investment to get as much land and accumulate as much land as we can, but it is actually to pour back into the community. And how do we do that? With financial resources, student, faculty research, there and staff input. That is what I do. I coordinate those relationships. And sometimes, honestly, when there's a misstep in the community, Cynthia is the one that comes in and I do my best to smooth it over. And thankfully, up to now, it has worked out pretty well. So I'm elevating missteps. Sometimes there have been missteps with students, and sometimes no organization gets it perfect, but the school was wise enough to put a unit in place to help the school work well with organizations and help our faculty to be sensitive toward how they work in community as well as students. So somebody said this is so inspiring and moving. I'm so glad you feel that way because the passion that you are getting is sincere. Because I know, Stephanie knows, and Carolyn knows that sometimes because of this type of session, students connect with individuals and they believe what it is that we're telling them. And I'm telling you, students, you can believe it. This community is waiting on you. You, though, must make this opportunity the best that it can possibly be. And that means connecting to individuals within the school that will help you meet your goal. And that is to have a strong education so that you can go out into the community and make things better, way better. Any other questions?
We still have a couple minutes left if anyone has any remaining questions for Cynthia, Carolyn, or Stephanie.
Okay. nearing the end. I don't believe in holding people just because you schedule something for a certain amount of time. What I would like to do is ask Carolyn, then Stephanie, do you have any parting words that you'd like to leave with our students?
Sure, I do. I wanted to let all of you know um, that we do, even though I'm not in the Brown School, I do lead a program, a paid internship program called Interns, that's open to students of any level and in any program on campus, including you, that place WashU students in internships with partner organizations doing environmental work, and with a special focus on environmental justice work. So if that's something that interests you, I will drop a link in the chat, and that's something you can follow up with when you get started at the Brown School.
And I would just thank you for having a chance for us to talk about St. Louis and hopefully some of the great opportunities through your time at the Brown School that you'll get to connect with. And I would, my parting words would be that it is such a great opportunity to be in St. Louis and to be at the Brown School. I know a lot of times it's a lot, shinier. Some of the things are offered on both of the coasts, but there's such great opportunities for you to really to dive in into the work and to meet some really great folks that I know that you won't get a chance to have elsewhere. And so I think, it's so exciting to be able to be given this chance to feel like you're a part of something and part of something that could really change how we really connect with each other and how we really, get to that next place that where we're are much more connected and together and a place that's really going to benefit all of us. And so that's what I'm excited to pass on, and excited to see all of your faces here in the fall. So good luck to you all.
Absolutely. And I'll close out. Listen, um, Stephanie, there's a question. Are there any practicum opportunities at the Gephardt Center? You can give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Lots of opportunities. Check out our website and our social media.
Absolutely. And so, guys, as we end our time together, just remember this: graduate school is no joke. It's not intended to be. You're going to work hard, you're going to learn a lot so that you can go out and make a better world. Prepare for it. Come ready to work and to learn and to invest and to be tired and to be happy and to be sad, because that's part of life. But we can get this done together. And although it might be hard some days, remember this. Somebody said this to me when I was having a hard time. I was working full time, raising a family, and going to school. Right in time, that person said, Cynthia, is short term pain for long term pleasure. And I'm telling you, I could not have done anything better than to be a graduate of the Brown School. Regardless of the profession that you're pursuing, this is the place for you. And I don't think that you will ever regret it. And the day that you need help, even though the pandemic is going, we can rub elbows or maybe even hug. Come and see me. Ask for what you need. Even if it's not a hug, but you need help from your professors, ask them. None of them are so important that they can't make time for you. Nice to meet you all.